Approximately 30 years ago, the Sahrawi people were expelled by Morocco from their homeland of the Western Sahara, a former Spanish colony. They were forced to flee their country, many on foot, and seek refuge in southwestern Algeria in the inhospitable Hamada Desert. The boundaries of the Western Sahara were defined by France and Spain, drawn up with little consideration for inherent communal and cultural differences.
Hasta hace muy poco, hasta los principios de los 90, todo, es decir, el enfoque cultural, social, tenía un solo sentido: la guerra y el proceso de independencia. Y entonces pasa con la música, la poesía, con todo, la vida, toda la vida tenía un solo sentido: morir por un ideal.
This is a recurring theme throughout the vast African continent, where colonizing powers carved up Africa, resulting in the definitive lines that outline present-day African states. Frontiers that are, however, indiscernible to nomadic African tribes.
Eran gente que buscaban el pasto y la lluvia, dependían solo de eso. Su vida solo dependía de la lluvia, de las nubes.
Western Sahara is part of the Travel Bidan, which encompasses not only the Western Sahara, but includes Mauritania, parts of Morocco, Algeria, and Mali.
Y la gente no hace nada para quedarse, ¿no? Este es un lugar transitorio, pero en eso llevan ya 30 años. Es mucho tiempo para tener las maletas preparadas para un viaje de regreso.
Our expedition began in the wilaya, or town, of Al Said. We couldn't help but observe, with intrigue, these rough level areas and bare rocks, typical of this Hamada Desert. The landscape was fascinating, but at the same time, there was an overwhelming realization of the harshness of life for the Sahrawis in this environment. For us, what lay ahead would be an intense period of discovery about a culture and a community that the world has all but forgotten, or in most cases chosen to ignore. That very afternoon, we were introduced to a young guitarist, Ahmed Zain. It was easy to picture him as an Iwi 400 years ago. In the old classes societies, the Iwi were the caste of musicians that constituted the lowest class in the Bedouin society, along with blacksmiths, Jewish descendants, and slaves. They were generally referred to as snaga. In this period, musicians did not only fulfill the role of entertaining. An Igwi had to be familiar with the heritage lineage of members of the higher classes. In this way, he venerated the affluent and earned his living. All that in the Igwi was required to know was passed down orally from his predecessors. Although a musician, today Ahmed does not have to earn his living in this way. After the particularly brutal invasion by Morocco and their subsequent expulsion from their territory, the Sahrawis abolished the system of social classes. Ahmed fortunately had a small sum of money at his disposal, thanks to the fact that he was one of the few musicians of the wilaya of Al Said. Ahmed explained how his first guitar was a self-forged contraption, comprising of a wooden stick and 2 strings. With this personalized guitar, he attempted to recreate the music he would hear on radio. Later, when attending weddings and social gatherings, he never partook in the festivities. He simply sat back and scrutinized how the guitarist played. Back home, he would try to reproduce these sounds on the guitars he had heard. to which his family responded by asking how he had learned to play such beautiful music. Ahmed recalls how his family often laughed and commented on how one day he would become a great musician. That unwitting prophecy has come to pass. Women in the Bedouin society have a special role in music. Sahrawi women are, however, anything but common. They are different to their sister kin in the rest of the Arabic world. For one, they are extraordinarily emotionally strong, self-reliant, and share relative equality with their male counterparts. In this society, the female voice has always been much more appreciated than that of their male compatriots. Rich men in the Travel-Udan will pay generous sums of money to be serenaded by a renowned female vocalist. Sweta, a talented local singer, will travel an arduous 170 kilometers across the desert to Dakhla to perform her repertoire upon request. The Travel-Udan is the only place in the Arabic Islamic world where women are permitted to play instruments. One of which is the Ardin, a 12 to 16 stringed harp-like instrument. The first reference to the Ardin is that of the French explorer Sieur de la Cour. Made in 1685, his early depictions and descriptions accurately describe this fascinating instrument. Apart from playing the Ardin, women are responsible for the rhythmic section in a musical ensemble. For this, they adopt a unique hand-clapping style and produce rhythms with the tawal, a traditional animal hide drum. The instruments of the Travel-Udan do not originate from the Arab world. Instruments such as the tirinit and the tawal were in fact introduced from sub-Saharan Africa. In the classist societies of old, poets occupied one of the highest classes. It was the poets who were responsible for recitals and citations. The creative use of text and citation of verse are much appreciated in Muslim society. Lueli Badeh Abdallahe Salem is the man who gave us an insight into the relationship between poetry and Sahrawi music. For it is the poet who decides in which musical mode a poem will be sung.
والمستفعلة الثالثة من 4 حركات، الأولى من 7 حركات والثانية من 4 حركات والثالثة من 7 حركات وعلى نفس القافية وفم تجي.
The Sahrawis are in fact descendants of travelers who crossed the vast expanse of the Sahara from Yemen. Whole music emanated from the Travel-Udan over 400 years ago. The link between the peoples of the Travel-Udan is the Hassaniya language, a language which was introduced to the region during the first waves of the Islamic influence in the 7th century. The arrival of the Beni Hala and Beni Hassan tribes during this period contributed immensely to social changes in the region.
وعاقب ذاك اللي نعطونا نماذج ثانية من الشعر اللي يعني اللي عاد متناول والله متداول اليوم، فهمتني؟ اللي عاد تقولوا الناس اليوم باش يعرف الإنسان مقارنة.
Hol literally means the art of the word.
اكتشف هذا البحر راجل من تكنة
Within whole, there are 7 different musical modes, termed bors, which simply means seas. It appears rather ironic that they would call these modes seas, when they live in the most arid of regions, so far from the sea. The modes are perceived in this way because each one has a unique characteristic intensity. Remembering too that before their expulsion, Sahrawis lived on the shores of the Great Atlantic. To understand the present state of music in these refugee camps, we have to look to the past. The order of a traditional recital of the musical modes is Entemas, Sinekar, Fagu, Skaya, Lebor, Layan, Leptate, and an additional mode, Sudan or Lera. Entemas is the first of these modes. It is a perfect fusion of the Arabic and sub-Saharan melodies and is characterized by the improvisation of the rest of the modes. It's really quite difficult to grasp the concept of scales in whole. The intervals between notes are different depending on whether a melodic line ascends or descends. For example, singers will use pentatonic melodies on ascending notes and more melismatic styles on descents. Here, many musicians are self-taught, facilitating a very personalized and unique style of performance. Sinekar is one of the more difficult modes to conceive. Problems arise when trying to relate this mode to more familiar scales. As we discovered, the only way to appreciate the Sinekar style is to let oneself go, allowing the musician to guide you through its curious progressions. In the case of Sinekar, one begins to appreciate that it is not solely the idea of grasping a musical scale, but trying to understand the concept of a culture in exile. In Sinekar, rhythms are much more punctuated compared to other modes. Fagu is the musical mode that was used in battle in the Trouble We Done, played to incite warriors during times of conflict. The author, Baroka, describes how, when they heard Fagu, even the horses braced themselves for battle. Even the most timid of them felt their blood begin to boil. Gradually, the music developed from songs of victory and defeat to paying homage to the courage of various tribes and communities. Today, Sahrawis use Fagu to extol martyrs who died during the conflict with Morocco. Fagu is also the musical mode that quite literally brings Sahrawis to their feet. Fagu, there are 3 distinct dances: Levleda, Chahar, and Seret, each one developing in tempo and intensity. These hand movements of the dancers supposedly mimic the graceful gaiting of camels as they travel through the desert sands. In Fagu, the dancing increases progressively in speed and intensity. Fagu is especially significant to poets, not only because of the historical quotations that it contains, but also the 11 unique forms of writing in Fagu. Skaya, the 4th mode, would appear to be a natural